Welcome to the Mindful Business Podcast, where we have conversations about building businesses with our mental and physical health in mind. Welcome to our second last episode for the year. We will have one more episode coming out in a week or two, but this will be my final individual episode for the year. And it was actually supposed to come out 2 weeks ago, but life lifed. And I procrastinated. Did I procrastinate? It's complicated. Let me explain from the beginning. A little story time to start off our episode. So the last few weeks have been interesting. I had my birthday in mid-November, which kind of kicked off a bit of a holiday mode, I think. So we had some celebrations. Actually, I had quite a few celebrations. I saw various friends and, breakfast, brunch, braai, all the bees, and had a lot of celebrating. But it kind of kicked off a feeling that I'm on holiday now. So I became a little bit more lethargic and was taking slower days. And then I kind of got into a bit of a funk, I think, because of it, and the weather has been doing a lot. It's been very rainy and a little bit cold and hasn't really felt like summer. And I'm very weather dependent, weather responsive. Whatever the weather is looking like, it usually influences my mood. So when it's kind of rainy and miserable and cold, I'm miserable and cold. So yeah, I think maybe coming off a whole bunch of celebrations and feeling like I was going on holiday and combined with the weather, I just didn't have the capacity really to show up for the podcast in the way that I wanted to. I'm very transparent about, I'm not about perfection, and I don't feel like we need to portray a particular version of ourselves when that's not true. But what I do think is important is a balance between the two. And I'm going to talk about the concept of showing up just now, but I want to tell my little story first. So I didn't have the capacity to show up for the podcast. I tried to film an episode and it just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel real and it didn't feel comfortable. So I gave myself the freedom to say, I'll just do it later and I'll postpone and delay, because this isn't a business for me just yet. This is a passion project and something that I want to feel joy when I interact with. I think a lot of passion projects become a business and then it sucks the life out of them. And it's too soon for that to happen with this. And I've been really enjoying the experience. So I didn't want to start, filming and releasing episodes where I just wasn't feeling in the right mindset, because this is the Mindful Business Podcast. So we need to be in the right mindset. So yeah, I basically delayed it for 2 weeks. And this week I started feeling a little bit more perky and the sun's shining and I was feeling a little bit more energetic to come and have a conversation. So we're back here and filming the episode. So I wanted to speak about that concept of showing up, right? Because that's something that I was struggling with over the last couple of weeks. Is I think showing up can be a really good motivator. I think it can inspire people to push themselves and work towards a goal and step out of their comfort zone, which I think is really healthy, especially as a business owner. I think that's how we progress and how we evolve. But there's this nasty side. It's kind of two-faced, right? So it's motivating, the concept of showing up. But then on the other side, there's this guilt that comes with it of, I have to show up a certain way and I have to show up consistently and regularly and to a certain point. And I just don't think that that's realistic or sustainable. If I force myself to come on and record every single time when I really wasn't feeling it or wasn't feeling authentic, then I think the message and the general quality of the podcast would decline. But also I would start to feel a bit of a resentment, and that's not healthy and it's not sustainable. On top of that, in the last week, I was going through my menstrual cycle, where I was just feeling really flat and I didn't have the energy. And women will know it ebbs and flows, right? Our month does not look consistent. Our weeks do not look consistent. It changes day by day, week by week. And I think that that's the problem I have with showing up consistently, is that especially as women, going through our menstrual cycle throughout the month has its ebbs and flows on our energy, our mood, our clarity, our mindset, and that affects how we go through our day, how we go through our week, how we manage our business. So as women, I think that it's important to be realistic of, like, we don't have to force ourselves to show up if we don't have capacity for it. And I'd rather, at least for myself, it's something that I'm practicing, I'd rather wait until I do have the capacity. It's not saying that I'm not going to do little things. And I think that's also important to recognize, is that showing up can look different for everyone and different on each days. Sometimes showing up on a particular day is really pushing and getting everything done and working really hard and, using that motivation to really make big progress. But other times showing up can just be getting the small things done, doing some admin, doing the lighter weight tasks when you're not feeling as energetic. I did put a poll on my Instagram a couple weeks ago asking about if we should have an episode where I bring on like a gynae or a GP and we talk about menstrual cycles in business and how it affects us as business owners in a good and, pros and cons, really. And this is kind of what I'm talking about here, is that we go through these ebbs and flows. And I don't think it's realistic for us to force ourselves to show up when our bodies and our minds are saying pause or rest or take a step back. And I think that showing up for your business mustn't be misunderstood with not showing up for yourself, because if you don't work and you don't function and you're not taking care of yourself, your business is going to fail. If you are a sole prop or a, self-employed, anything like that, even if you're just leading a team, if you can't lead that team sustainably, your business is going to suffer for it. So I think showing up can be pushing through and motivating yourself. It can be doing smaller tasks and lighter tasks and just, taking care of yourself gently, or it can mean taking a full step back. Sometimes showing up for yourself and your business doesn't mean pushing hard. It means stepping back. And I think that is what I had to do in the last 2 weeks. Is I was trying to force creativity and extroversion and chattiness. And I am very chatty by nature, but it makes it so much more prominent that when I'm not feeling that way and I force it, it feels so inauthentic and really uncomfortable. So that was something I was navigating, and just wanted to touch on a little bit, saying don't let the concept of showing up turn into guilt or comparison or maintaining unrealistic expectations in us as individuals, but also for our business. And I think that is especially prevalent now, or at least in the last month or so, because a lot of us are experiencing year-end fatigue. It's not really the time for us to be hustling. I mean, sometimes I've got some goals that I want to reach by the end of the year, and I'm working really hard to get to them. But there are some that I've pivoted or adjusted or just moved to next year, because I don't need to reach every single goal this year. A goal is still going to be achieved. It doesn't have to have a set deadline. So yeah, just kind of managing that understanding of showing up, how I want to show up, and the balance again between how hard do we work on something versus what effect do we let it have on us? Because if I push myself in every facet of my business, so this podcast, my design business, my personal life, everything, if I pushed every element to the max in the last week or two, I would go into my holiday with burnout. And that is the key thing that as a conversation we're trying to avoid. So yeah, that was my last couple of weeks and what I've been navigating at the moment. I'm not sure if anyone else is feeling the year-end fatigue or, has this complicated relationship with the concept of showing up as a business owner. Don't even get me started about showing up on social media. That is a whole nother kettle of fish that we'll deal with next year. But yeah, if anyone else is feeling that way, you're not alone. I am with you. And on that note, I wanted to talk about if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling a little bit tired, or that you've got goals that you need to be pushing towards and you really want to get them and you feel like you're kind of grafting really, really hard at the moment. I want to talk about winding down strategically before your holidays. And the reason I say this is, again, because a lot of us will work really, really, really hard to reach targets, reach deadlines, and work ourselves to the bone all the way to that final finish line at the end of the year. And then what happens is we have this kind of cold turkey moment, right, where we completely switch off immediately. And all that adrenaline and that energy and that kind of passion and work that's been building up just comes to a complete stop. And we think sometimes that means now we can rest. But what our body often does is it drops, because we haven't been sleeping properly. We haven't been eating properly. We haven't been hydrating. We haven't been taking moments to rest. We've just been pushing. And then our immune system drops and we get sick. And then the next thing you know, for the first week or week and a half of your December holiday, if you're taking a December holiday, you're sick. And then you don't actually get time to enjoy spending time with your family or your friends, or even just relaxing for yourself. You're just busy healing. And I want to see, I don't know if it's a little too late to be touching on this, but something to think about maybe in the coming weeks, if you are finished or finishing work, is winding down slowly. So I think we put a lot of internal pressure on ourselves to finish off the year in a neat little bow. And that's not always realistic. It's not always the case. So I think relieving yourself of that pressure and giving yourselves permission to finish the year in a non-perfect way, I'm giving it to you. If you didn't have it or you've been feeling pressured, I'm giving you permission to finish imperfectly. There is nothing wrong with that. We'll talk about reflecting on the year just now at the end. And I think that, again, there's that balance there of don't forget everything you've achieved. But for now, we're focusing on the winding down. So maybe some of you are pushing for a goal or, working really hard, and I'm so genuinely cheering you on to reach those goals. I have the same thing. I'm pushing a little bit hard at the moment. Just like the last 2 days, there's a couple projects I want to get done and things I want to achieve. But like I mentioned, there are some goals that I have just adjusted the goalpost a little bit because I'd rather give myself a slow wind down than a panic and hustle and then a burnout later. What I would recommend you do is consider what goals are worth what sacrifices. So hit some of those goals, work towards them. But if there are too many or some of them are too much and they can be adjusted, then just adjust them. It's worth it because then you can start having slower days. You can have a little bit of a slower morning, have a bit of a lie-in, have a shorter working day, have a longer lunch, have a lunch with a friend, start having small pockets of holiday experience just to start giving your body and your brain a little bit of a wind down period before we go into full holiday mode, if you are having a full holiday mode. I don't really believe in a cold turkey approach for this context. Sometimes it's healthy, but in this context, I think cold turkey, again, isn't natural. Ebbs and flows. We build up into the year gradually, and then we wind down gradually. And I think that that's a healthy habit to get into, not this start with a bang and end with a burnout. You know what I mean? And then lastly, I just want to, as I mentioned, talk about reflection. I think that, again, it's a good time of the year to think back. If you are putting yourself under pressure or chastising yourself for not reaching certain goals that you thought you would have reached by the year, take the opportunity to just think about what you have achieved this year. I've had an amazing year. I've made some of the biggest mistakes I've made in my business. We know that I think it was episode 4, somewhere around there, where I've made a couple mistakes and I've learned some really big lessons this year. But I also started this podcast and I landed one of the biggest projects I've ever had before, and it's going really well. And I'm feeling really proud of the work that I've done. It's looked very different to how I expected it. I do my intentions at the beginning of the year, and I was looking over them the other day, and there's so many that I didn't even touch. I didn't even get to them, but new ones came up and I chose to go with them instead, and I left some behind. And my year has looked very different to what I anticipated it looking like, but I'm really proud of the things, the big and the small things that I've done, and the fact that we've made it through another year. And I made it through the year primarily without having a burnout experience or feeling exhausted. I felt, as much as practically maybe things looked a little different than how I would have expected it, and maybe I achieved slightly less. I did less projects and I did less work technically in the business. I feel like I worked on myself so much more. And this is where this podcast came from, is that I wanted to try and establish better balance and better understanding and a more mindful approach throughout the year for business. And I feel like in the second half of the year, I really started applying that to my life and to my business. So that I'm really proud of that. And it doesn't have to be reflecting on the year from a quantitative perspective. Yes, we have targets and goals and numbers that we want to reach. And I hope that you look back on them and you feel like you have achieved a lot of the goals you wanted to. But I would also remind you to consider the more qualitative achievements. Were you protective of your mental health? Did you stick to your boundaries? Did you build new friendships and build new connections and learn something new that wasn't necessarily associated with your business? Fueling you as a person, I think, fuels your business. So if you feel like you've had personal growth, for me, that is a giant value add for my business the next year. And that's what I would encourage you to maybe pay attention to at the moment. So yeah, take some time to reflect on what your years look like. Sometimes we might have failed in certain areas, maybe not failed, maybe some things didn't work out, and all that means is that it's not a failure for the year, it's an opportunity for next year. I have a very optimistic mindset, and I really do believe that it helps, that it works. I think you attract what you put out. So if you have something that you didn't achieve this year, it's not a failure, it's an opportunity for next year. And most likely you've learned something. So look back on what you achieved, what you didn't, what you've learned, what you can use to build next year. I have so many things that I've learned from this year, from my successes and my failures, or the things that just didn't happen, that I'm very excited to take into next year with, a more mature mind and more experience. And maybe then I'll be more ready to reach those goals and achieve those targets that I set out for myself. So yeah, it's been an interesting last couple of weeks. I've been tired and felt like I was experiencing year-end fatigue, but then I've picked up again recently. I think I'm excited, and I gave myself that opportunity to rest and reflect and just really now be conscious about winding down slowly for the December holidays, so I can really truly enjoy time with my family and my friends, and hopefully some nicer weather at some point. I think that's all for today. Just being conscious of your relationship with showing up and reflecting on the year, and then winding down slowly and being kind to yourself to make sure that we can start the new year off with a renewed sense of energy and not feeling drained already. And have a wonderful holidays. I won't be chatting again for the year. I will post the next episode. It's on finance, so pay attention to look for tips for the new year. Otherwise, that's all from me. I've had so much fun starting this podcast and starting these conversations, and I'm really genuinely excited for some of the stuff that we've got planned next year. We've got a lot of interest and a lot of conversations that are coming. So essentially, that's me just kind of saying goodbye for the year. Have an amazing holiday. And if you're, taking time off, if you're not, look after yourself. The festive season, if you're a business owner that's busy and the festive season is chaotic, please be mindful. Look after yourself and take it day by day. I will see you next year. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Business Podcast. If this resonates with you, please follow along, share it with a friend or a family member who you think could benefit from it. Leave a review, a comment, a question. I'd love to hear from you. What are you struggling with? What do you want to know about? Also, don't forget to take a break today. You're allowed to go at your own pace. See you next time.